I used to think family meant forever. I thought it meant Sunday dinners, birthday hugs, Christmas mornings with loud voices, and even louder laughs. I believed that if you gave love, you'd receive it back. Maybe not in the same way, but enough to know you mattered. I was wrong. It started small. Most things do. A sigh when I asked for help opening a jar. A quick glance exchanged between my daughter and her husband when I joined them in the living room. A forgotten coffee mug left in front of me with a cold stare that said, "You still haven't cleaned that?" At first I made excuses for them. Maybe they were tired. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe, just maybe, I was the problem. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. My name is Eleanor Marsh. I'm 74 years old. I raised 2 children on my own after my husband passed when I was 36. I worked 3 jobs. I made casseroles for bake sales, sewed Halloween costumes, and wiped away more tears than I can count, both theirs and mine. I never asked for much in return, just kindness, just a place to rest. But lately even that had become too much. It was my daughter Lisa who invited me to move in after my fall. "Just until you get better," she'd said. I believed her. I came with nothing but a suitcase, a box of photo albums, and my sewing basket. I gave up the small apartment I'd rented since retirement. I gave away furniture I couldn't carry. I left behind friends, neighbors, and familiarity, all because Lisa said, "Your family, of course we want you here." But wanting someone around and respecting them are 2 very different things. The first real sign was the note on the fridge. It read, "Please don't use the washer after 6 p.m. It wakes the baby." Fair enough, I thought. I was careful to follow it. I tiptoed. I folded towels in the dark. I didn't even dry my clothes fully if it meant they'd stop tumbling before bedtime. Then came the second note. "Remember to use your own bathroom. Ours is for family." That one stung. I lived in the basement. Lisa said it would be cozier and private, but it had no windows and smelled faintly of mold, like the air never fully moved. My knees ached every time I climbed the stairs, but I told myself it was temporary. Still, when I read that note, I realized something had changed. Maybe it always had been this way and I just hadn't seen it clearly. They didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as an obligation. One morning I was making toast when Lisa walked into the kitchen in a rush. She didn't greet me, didn't ask how I'd slept. Instead, she said sharply, "Mom, you left crumbs everywhere. The baby crawls in here, you know." I looked down at the counter, 2 tiny crumbs, barely noticeable. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She didn't respond, just walked out. Her husband Brad wasn't much better. He'd started calling me ma'am instead of mom, always with that flat voice, like I was a stranger in his home. Once I heard him on the phone with his brother. "Yeah, we're still housing the old lady. She's fine, just in the way." In the way. I sat on the stairs and cried that night. Quietly. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want them to hear me and think I was trying to guilt them. I just wanted to feel human again. It wasn't long before they made it official. I came home from a walk to find a new door installed in the basement. Not just a door, a locking door. From the outside. Lisa called it a privacy door. Said it would help the baby sleep better. But I wasn't stupid. That lock wasn't to keep sound out. It was to keep me in. They were boxing me in like I was some forgotten thing, something to hide when company came over. I said nothing. What was there to say that wouldn't be twisted into drama or overreacting? I kept my head down, folded laundry, cooked dinner, bit my tongue, until the birthday. It was a week before my 75th birthday. I overheard Lisa and Brad talking about their weekend plans. "Dinner reservations are at 6. Brad said, "Should we ask your mom to babysit?" Lisa snorted. That's basically all she's good for these days. I froze. The words knocked the air from my lungs. I had changed their diapers, held them through fevers, sold my wedding ring to pay for Lisa's college textbooks, and now I was just the babysitter. That night I didn't cry. I packed quietly, carefully, just one suitcase. I didn't need much. I folded the sweater Lisa gave me years ago, the one she probably forgot she'd even bought. I tucked in my slippers, my address book, and the last birthday card I'd received from my late husband. It was from 20 years ago, but I still carried it like it was yesterday. Then I sat at the small folding table in the basement and wrote a note, not an angry letter, not a dramatic goodbye, just a few words. Thank you for the roof. But I was never just a roof over your head. I was the foundation. I'm going to find one of my own now, Mom. I folded the note and placed it on the kitchen counter. Next to it, I laid the house key. Then I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back, because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave in silence. I walked to the bus stop that morning with nothing but my suitcase and a strange calm in my chest. Not fear, not anger, just calm. The kind of peace that only comes after the storm, after you've been told again and again that your presence is a burden, your kindness is too much, and your love is no longer needed. I stood at the corner of Mayfield and 3rd, the wind tugging gently at my coat, and watched the neighborhood I'd helped build disappear behind me. The grocery store where I used to bring Lisa for candy. The coffee shop that opened after Mark passed away, where I'd once found comfort in a cup of chamomile and crossword puzzles, all fading now. And I let them, because it was time for something else, something mine. The bus arrived. I stepped on, paid the fare, and took a seat near the back. A young boy across the aisle peeked over his seat at me, his wide brown eyes blinking curiously. I smiled at him. He smiled back. It was the first genuine human connection I'd felt in weeks. I didn't have a destination in mind, just an idea. There was a woman named Carol Bentley, a friend from my church days. We used to volunteer at the local shelter together. She and I had once spent an entire summer knitting scarves for veterans. We'd lost touch over the years, but I remembered her kindness, her steady voice, the way she always said, let people show you who they are. Once they do, believe them. I found her name in my address book and called from the bus station. Eleanor, she said, her voice full of surprise. I know it's been a while, Carol, but I'm in a bit of a situation. Say no more, she replied. You get here and I'll put the kettle on. She gave me her address and a few bus directions. It wasn't far, just over an hour away. Closer than I expected, but far enough to feel like freedom. Carol's home was a small sunlit cottage on the edge of a quiet town called Maple Ridge. There were flower boxes on the windows and wind chimes hanging from the porch. It smelled like lavender and old books. She hugged me the moment I arrived. You look tired, she said gently, but strong. I didn't say much that night. We sat in her kitchen, sipping tea while a rainstorm patted against the roof. I told her about Lisa, about Brad, about the basement and the notes and the lock on the door. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. That, more than anything, made me feel human again. When I finished, she nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, she said. Leaving takes courage, but not looking back, that takes strength. She let me stay in her guest room. It was small, but the bed was warm, and the window overlooked a quiet garden full of bees and sunlight. I slept for 10 hours straight. When I woke up, I felt like I'd finally come home. The days at Carol's turned into weeks. We shared chores. We cooked together. I started knitting again. Carol introduced me to her book club, a group of 5 women all over 70, who gathered every Thursday for coffee, cake, and sometimes gossip. I felt useful again, seen. I even started volunteering at the Maple Ridge Library. They needed someone to organize the children's corner, and I was happy to do it. Little by little, life began to bloom again. One afternoon, as I was reshelving books, a girl tugged at my sleeve. "Are you the story lady?" she asked shyly. I smiled. "I can be." That's how I began reading to children every Saturday morning. Fairy tales, adventures, poems. My voice came back to me like an old friend. People clapped. Children giggled. Someone once called me a treasure. I cried that night, but for a different reason. Not sadness, not loss, gratitude. 3 months passed. I hadn't heard from Lisa. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a forwarded piece of mail. At first it hurt, but over time I stopped checking my phone. Stopped wondering if she cared. Because the truth was, if someone sees you as inconvenient once, they'll do it again. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. One morning, Carol came into the kitchen holding a white envelope. "This came for you," she said. I looked down at the return address. It was from Lisa. My stomach dropped. I opened it slowly. Inside was a birthday card. Not the kind with glitter or flowers. Just a plain white card that said, "Hope you're okay. Bella misses you. Lisa." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just 7 words. I folded the card and slid it into the drawer, not because it hurt me, but because it didn't. I had already left that chapter behind. That night, Carol and I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over Maple Ridge. She poured us both a glass of lemonade. "You ever think of writing them back?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Some bridges don't need to be burned. Just never crossed again." She nodded. Silence passed between us, but it was the kind of silence that feels like understanding. Later that week, I walked down to the local notary office. I had a few things I wanted to change. My legal will, my emergency contacts, my power of attorney. I had given all those things to Lisa after my fall. Not anymore. I named Carol as my medical proxy. I listed the Maple Ridge Library in my will, and I made sure my final wishes were mine. No one else's to twist. As I signed the last document, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: ownership. Not just over property, but over myself. One Sunday, I bumped into a woman named Marie at the farmer's market. She ran a tiny bookstore and said they were looking for help. "You've got that librarian look," she teased. I laughed. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" She smiled. "Definitely a compliment." And just like that, I became part-time help at the Red Fern bookshop. A quiet, wood-paneled little place where I got to recommend novels, stack paperbacks, and meet people who didn't see me as old. They saw me as Eleanor, the woman who laughed loudly, who read stories with flair, who wore soft cardigans and always smelled like cinnamon and books. I liked that version of me, because it was the real one. Not the ghost Lisa had turned me into, not the burden Brad sighed about. Just me, alive, present, whole. And then, one afternoon, I saw a familiar car parked near the bookshop. Lisa. She stood across the street holding Bella's hand. I didn't panic. I didn't hide. I waved. Bella waved back, smiling. Lisa just stared. I didn't walk over, because this wasn't her chapter anymore. This was mine. The bookstore was unusually quiet that day. The late afternoon sun came in soft through the front windows, lighting up the dust in the air like glitter. I was wiping down the children's section when I saw them. Lisa and Bella standing just outside the glass. Bella had grown. Her hair was longer now, tied up in 2 puffy ponytails, and she was holding a pink stuffed bear close to her chest. Lisa looked tired, or maybe just unsure. I stood up straight, adjusted my cardigan, and walked calmly to the door. "Hi," I said, stepping outside. Lisa gave a small wave. "Hi, Mom." I looked down at Bella. "And who is this beautiful young lady?" Bella smiled wide. "Grandma." I felt a soft crack in my chest. Not pain, just that first reminder of love trying to find its way back in. I knelt and opened my arms. Bella ran into them without hesitation. "I missed you," she whispered. I held her tight. "I missed you too, sweetheart, so much." When I stood again, Lisa cleared her throat. I didn't think you'd want to see us," she said. "I didn't expect to," I replied. She looked at the bookstore behind me, then down at her shoes. "You look different, happier." I am. We sat on the bench outside the shop. Bella played nearby with her bear. Lisa and I sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable, just full. "Finally," she said. "You didn't leave a phone number." "I left a note," I replied gently. Her jaw tightened. "It felt like you abandoned us." That made me laugh. Not out of cruelty, but disbelief. "Lisa," I said softly, "you put a lock on the basement door. You left notes instead of conversations. You called me inconvenient. Do you really think I abandoned you? Or did I just stop accepting what I never deserved?" She flinched. "I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel. But I wasn't going to lie either." She sighed. "I didn't realize. I guess I didn't think you'd actually leave. That was the problem," I said. "You stopped seeing me as someone who could." Bella came running back with a daisy in her hand. "For you," she said, holding it out. I took it, tears stinging my eyes. "Thank you, honey." Lisa watched us, silent. Then she asked, "Can we have dinner sometime, just to talk?" I paused, not out of hesitation, but because I wanted to answer clearly. "I'd love to see Bella again, anytime." Lisa's lips tightened. "So, not dinner with me?" I shook my head slowly. "Not until you understand what you did. Not until you're sorry for more than just the silence that came after." Later that evening, Carol asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. I saw her. She raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I saw Bella too," I added. "That was the important part." Carol smiled. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want peace. And now I have it." We sat in the garden as the sun dipped below the trees. The air was cool. I pulled the shawl around my shoulders and closed my eyes. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe Lisa would apologize one day. Maybe she wouldn't. But I had made my decision the day I walked out that front door. I wouldn't live in places that called me a burden. I wouldn't stay where I had to beg to be seen. Not again. Never again. It was a week later when I received the invitation. A pale blue envelope. Thick paper. My name written in Lisa's neat handwriting. It felt formal. Too formal. I sat at the kitchen table with Carol beside me as I opened it. Inside was a folded card, decorated with roses. "Bella's 7th birthday party Sunday at 2 p.m. You are invited." Nothing more. No love. No "we hope you'll come," just the address and time. Carol watched my face. "How do you feel about it?" I set the card down, confused, sad, unsure. I'd say those are all valid. I didn't make a decision right away. I went for a walk through Maple Ridge, the bookstore, the bakery, the library, all places where I felt like myself again. I looked around and realized this small town had filled something in me I hadn't even realized was empty. I asked myself, if I go to the party, is it because I want to see Bella, or because I'm hoping Lisa has changed? Because if it's the second one, I might be setting myself up for another bruise. Still, when Sunday came, I put on my nicest cardigan, blue with tiny pearl buttons. I tied my hair up and wore the earrings Mark gave me for our 25th anniversary, the ones I hadn't touched in years. Carol offered to drive me. "I'll wait in the car," she said. "Just in case." I smiled. You always were the practical one. The party was at Lisa and Brad's new house, not the old one, the one I left behind. This one was bigger, cleaner, whiter. I walked up the stone path, listening to the laughter inside. Kids' voices, music, the smell of grilled hot dogs. I knocked on the door. A teenage girl I didn't recognize opened it. "Oh, you must be Bella's grandma. Come in," she called out. "Lisa, your mom's here," and the room quieted. Lisa walked in slowly, holding a juice box. She looked stunned, as if she hadn't believed I would come. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Lisa." For a moment I didn't know what to say. Then I felt Bella tug at my coat. "You came," she shouted, wrapping her arms around me. I knelt and hugged her. "Of course I did, baby. I wouldn't miss it for the world." She took my hand and pulled me toward the backyard. It was warm outside. A big bounce house sat in one corner, and a folding table covered in cupcakes stood in the other. Parents chatted, children ran around in painted faces. I sat at a picnic table, watching Bella play. She glanced over at me often, smiling each time. Lisa brought me a plate of food. "It's not much, just grilled stuff." "Thank you," I said. She sat across from me. We ate in silence for a bit. Then she said, "I wasn't sure if you'd come." "I wasn't sure either." She nodded. "You look good." "I feel good." "I'm glad." There was a pause. Then she said the thing I didn't expect. "I'm sorry." I looked up. "For calling you inconvenient. For treating you like furniture." I didn't see it then, but I do now. I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to bring this up today. She added quickly, "I just wanted to say it. You didn't deserve what we did." I let the silence hold a little longer. Then I said softly, "Thank you." Bella came over with frosting on her nose and asked if I'd sit with her for the cake. We sang, we clapped. She blew out her candles in one try. Later, Lisa brought out a small box. "I know it's not your birthday," she said, "but Bella insisted we get this for you." Inside was a hand-painted mug. It said, "Best Grandma Ever." My hands trembled. Bella beamed. "Now you have one for your tea." I hugged her close, feeling a warmth bloom in my chest. It didn't erase what had happened, but it softened something. When I walked back out to the car, Carol rolled down the window. "Well?" she asked. "I'm glad I went," I said. "But I'm also glad I'm leaving." She smiled. "Healthy boundaries. Look at you." As we pulled away, I looked back once, just once, not because I missed it, but because I needed to see that I could visit the past without falling back into it. It was the knock on my bookstore door that caught me off guard. I was just finishing up a restock of the poetry shelf, placing a few Emily Dickinson collections beside Mary Oliver, when I heard the urgent tapping. It wasn't forceful, but it had a rhythm that said, "Please answer now." When I opened it, Lisa stood there, but this time, she wasn't neat or composed. Her hair was up in a haphazard ponytail, eyes red, mascara smudged. She looked like someone who'd been crying for hours, and then ran out of tears. "Mom," she said, voice cracking. "I need you." I didn't speak. I just stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the armchair near the counter, holding her hands between her knees, like she didn't trust herself to let go. "It's Bella," she said. "She's okay now, but we had a scare. She passed out at school yesterday. They think it was dehydration, maybe anxiety. She's been quieter since the move." I didn't notice how much it was affecting her. I stayed silent. Let her talk. "I thought I was doing everything right," she continued. "New house, better neighborhood, structure, rule." But all she wanted was time, and I wasn't giving it to her. Not the kind she needed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She keeps asking for you." My heart clenched. "She wants to stay with you for a weekend," Lisa added quickly. "Just to talk. To feel okay again." "But I won't ask you to do anything you don't want to, after everything." I took a breath. "Lisa," I said softly, "I love Bella. That has never changed." "I know," she whispered. I was the one who forgot. That Friday, I picked Bella up from school. She came running out with her backpack bouncing, and that same pink stuffed bear in her arms. "Grandma," she shouted, barreling into me. I knelt to hug her tightly. "I missed you, sweet pea." "I brought the book you gave me," she said, pulling a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web from her bag. "Can we read it again tonight?" "We'll read it 3 times if you want," I smiled. That night we sat in my living room, sipping hot cocoa. Bella wrapped herself in the quilt I'd sewn years ago, the one with little animals stitched into every patch. We didn't talk much. She just rested her head on my lap, and I stroked her hair. That was all she needed. All I needed too. On Sunday, before taking her back, I gave Bella a small envelope. "What is it?" she asked. "A letter," I said. "It's for your mom." She looked at it seriously. "Can I read it?" I smiled. "No, sweetheart. This one's just for her. But it says something very simple, that love without respect is like a roof with no walls." She frowned. "That doesn't sound very nice. It's not meant to be mean, it's meant to be true." Lisa called later that evening. "I read your letter, and I needed it." Silence passed between us. Then she added, "Can we maybe talk more regularly? Not just about Bella?" I hesitated. "I'm not ready to be your emotional safety net again," I said gently. "But I'm open to something new, something honest." "That's fair," she said. "I'll earn it." "I hope so," I said. "Because forgiveness isn't something owed, it's something built." Later that night, Carol and I sat on the porch. The stars stretched above like scattered salt. "I never thought I'd see the day," Carol said, sipping her tea. "She's crawling back." "She's walking," I corrected. "Crawling would mean she's weak, and I don't want that. I want her to rise. For her daughter." "You're too kind." "No," I said, looking at the star. "I'm just finally kind to myself too." 2 weeks after Bella's weekend visit, I received a letter in the mail that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't from Lisa, or Bella's school or the bookstore supplier. It was from a law office in a neighboring city. Miller and Hartman, LL. The name meant nothing to me at first, until I opened the envelope and saw what was inside. It was regarding Mark's old cabin. I hadn't thought about it in years. After he passed, I left the small lakeside property in legal limbo. We'd used it a few times in the early days of our marriage, but once Mark got sick, it sat unused. I didn't have the energy or the emotional strength to decide what to do with it. Apparently now someone had. The letter said Lisa had filed paperwork to claim it as part of her inherited interest. I blinked at the page. "She had what?" I called the number on the letter. The woman on the other end was polite, firm, and frustratingly vague. "Yes, we were contacted by Miss Lisa Newman regarding her legal interest in the cabin property previously under the joint name of Eleanor and Mark Thompson." "I never passed anything to her," I said sharply. "There was no will that gave her the cabin. She claims there's verbal intent and some documented evidence of your late husband discussing this prior to his passing." I nearly dropped the phone. Mark died in his sleep. He hadn't even updated his will after his second hospital stay. "She has no right," I said. "You may need to provide proof of sole ownership." The woman replied. I hung up. I sat in silence for a long time, holding the edges of the document like it might burn me. Then I called my lawyer, Judith Evans, the same woman who had helped me form the living trust for my house, agreed to meet me that same day. When I arrived, she had already pulled out the relevant property records. "Mark's name was on the cabin deed," she said, flipping through the file. "But you were also listed as joint tenant with right of survivorship, which means I should be the only one with claim to it," I finished. "Exactly," Judith nodded. "But if Lisa is trying to claim there was a verbal agreement between you and Mark about passing it to her," she let the sentence hang. Then she's trying to grab something that doesn't belong to her, I said. Judith leaned back in her chair. You wanna fight? I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the wall and wondered, was this why she'd started showing remorse? Was it real, or was it a slow, manipulative strategy to inch back into my assets? I want to protect what's mine, I finally said, and make sure Bella is the only one who inherits anything when I choose to pass it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Carol sat across from me at the kitchen table as I pored over old files, looking for anything that might help. She's trying to take the cabin, she asked. I nodded. It's not even about the property. It's about the principle. She came to me asking for forgiveness, and days later she's filing claims behind my back. She's trying to play both sides. Carol muttered, guilt and greed. She almost had me believing she'd changed. Carol reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You believed it because you wanted to. That doesn't make you foolish. That makes you human. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I drove to the cabin. It was still there. Wooden siding, old green shutters, and a wind chime that hadn't moved in years. The place looked tired, forgotten, but it was mine. The pine trees were taller now. The dock was falling apart. But when I stepped inside, it still smelled like cedar and firewood and faint memories. I found an old photo of Mark and me on the mantel. Us, younger, smiling. This place was where we'd gone after we found out I couldn't have more children. A weekend of crying and laughing and rebuilding. And now, Lisa wanted to claim it. Like it meant nothing to me. I walked out to the porch, sat on the creaky bench, and let the wind hit my face. No, I whispered aloud. Not this. Judith filed an injunction the next morning. We submitted documentation proving the survivorship clause on the deed. Lisa would be served with a cease and desist until a judge reviewed the case. By noon, Lisa was calling me. Her name flashed on my phone screen again and again. I didn't answer. She sent a text. Why are you doing this? I thought we were making progress. I didn't reply. She sent another. I didn't mean to upset you. I just thought maybe we could use the cabin someday as a family. For Bella. That one almost got me. But the truth was, if she had wanted to use the cabin as a family, she would have asked, not filed paperwork behind my back. I wrote one last letter that evening. It wasn't long, just a few lines. Lisa, love without respect is still manipulation. You don't get to ask for forgiveness with one hand and take from me with the other. Until you learn that, I will continue protecting my peace, with or without your understanding. Mom. I sealed the envelope and sent it through registered mail. Not a text. Not a call. A legal, traceable reminder that I saw through the mask and would not be fooled again. The registered letter was signed for the next day. I knew because the postal service sent me confirmation. And I knew Lisa had read it, because just before sunset, my phone began to ring again. It rang 3 times before I finally gave in and picked up. Her voice came through the speaker low, shaky. Mom, she began. I got your letter. I didn't say anything. I know what it looks like, she continued quickly. But I wasn't trying to take anything from you. I stayed silent. I thought you didn't want the cabin anymore. It's been abandoned for years. I thought maybe it was time it became useful again. Bella loved it there when she was little, and I just wanted to build something for her. Her voice cracked. She paused to take a breath. You should have asked, I said. I didn't think I had to, she snapped. And then caught herself. I didn't realize it would make you feel betrayed. I just thought, you thought wrong, I said. There was a pause, a long one. Then she asked, softly, do you want me to stop seeing Bella? My heart clenched. Of course not, I said. But I won't allow her to be used as a bridge you burn and rebuild whenever you want. If you want to fix things between us, Lisa, do it the right way. She didn't respond for a moment. Then, what's the right way? I answered simply. You listen, you take accountability. And you stop playing victim when the consequences show up. The line was quiet. Then I heard her sniffle. I'll try, she whispered. You'll have to do more than try, I said, and I hung up. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. Carol and I sat on the porch most evenings, watching the summer trees bend in the wind. Sometimes she'd read aloud from her crime novels. Other times we'd just sit, both of us in rocking chairs, letting the silence speak for us. Then one afternoon, Bella showed up. Unannounced, she had her little purple backpack and a pair of sandals that looked one size too small. Her hair was in pigtails, and she wore a hopeful smile like it was sewn to her cheeks. Mom said I could stay the night, she beamed. Lisa hadn't called, hadn't asked, hadn't checked. I took a breath, crouched down, and gave Bella a warm hug. Of course you can, sweetheart. She ran inside, already talking about the movie she wanted to watch, and how she brought her coloring books. I smiled, but inside I was uneasy. Lisa had made another choice for me, without me. That night, Bella and I made popcorn and watched Charlotte's Web again. She held my hand during the sad parts and asked me questions about growing up on a farm, even though I never did. After the movie, she climbed into the guest bed and fell asleep with the stuffed bear I'd sewn for her last Christmas. I sat beside her a long time, stroking her hair, thinking about the years I spent fighting to be present, thinking about how Lisa had once begged me to babysit, begged me to step in when things got tough, and now, suddenly, I was inconvenient again. Except now, I wasn't staying quiet about it. The next morning, Lisa showed up. Her car rolled into the driveway like a storm cloud, and she stepped out in sunglasses, holding her phone in one hand and a forced smile on her face. Good morning, she said. I crossed my arms. You didn't call. I figured it would be okay, she said lightly. She misses you. That's not the point. She paused, her face stiffening. I thought we were working on trust. No, I said clearly. We're working on rebuilding it, and that takes effort, honesty, boundaries, not assumption. Bella came to the door then, holding the bear, eyes wide. Mommy? Lisa softened. Hey baby, ready to go? Bella looked at me. Can I stay one more night? Lisa's face tightened, just slightly. We have plans, sweetie. Bella looked disappointed but nodded. I knelt down and kissed her forehead. Next weekend, I said. You bring that bear back, okay? She smiled. Okay, Grandma. After they drove off, I stood on the porch for a long time. The sky was blue, but something heavy pressed down on me. Lisa was trying, yes. But she was also pushing boundaries, pushing guilt, pushing the idea that her needs could once again be the center of my life. And I was no longer willing to go back to that place. The following week, Judith called. She'd reviewed all the paperwork regarding the cabin and confirmed Lisa had no legal claim. We could move forward with a protective trust to ensure that no one, even Bella, could claim it without my consent in writing. I signed the documents with steady hands, not out of spite, out of clarity. 2 days later, Lisa showed up again. This time she wasn't smiling. You put the cabin in a protective trust? She asked, holding a printed copy of the filing. Yes, I said calmly. You really don't trust me at all. I looked at her for a long moment. I'm learning to trust myself again, I said. And that means protecting what I've worked for. She looked down, jaw tight. You act like I'm stealing from you. You filed legal papers behind my back. I reminded her. You lied by omission. And now you're acting wounded because I responded with caution. Tears welled up in her eyes. You used to be soft. I tilted my head. No, I used to be silent. There's a difference. She swallowed, angry, sad. but quiet. And then for the first time in a long time, she didn't argue. She just said, okay. Then turned and left. That night, Carol made tea, and we watched the sun dip behind the trees. She's learning, Carol said. Slowly, I nodded. But so are you. About what? I asked. She smiled. That being loved doesn't mean being used. I smiled back, and for the first time in months, I believed it. 2 months passed. Not all at once, but slowly. Like honey pouring from a jar. Thick and reluctant. The days bled together. And so did the silences between Lisa and me. We hadn't spoken since the day she left, crying on the porch. Not a text. Not a call. But Bella came every weekend. Every Friday evening, like clockwork. She'd show up with her backpack, a giant grin, and stories that never seemed to end. And every Sunday, she'd leave with her bear, one new drawing, and one extra hug. I never brought up Lisa during our time together. And Bella never asked why. Children know when things are broken. They just don't always know who dropped them. On a chilly October morning, I decided to sort through Mark's old wooden chest. I hadn't touched it since the year after he died. I pulled it from the back of the closet, sat on the carpet with a cup of tea, and opened the heavy lid. Inside his veteran's cap, some old letter, 2 watches that no longer ticked. A dried corsage from our 40th anniversary dinner. And near the bottom, a faded envelope with his handwriting on the front. To Ellie, when you need to remember. I swallowed the lump in my throat and opened it with shaking hand. Inside was a single page, yellowed at the edges. Ellie, if you're reading this, it means things have gotten hard again. I want you to remember something. You are not soft. You are steel, wrapped in gray. You give people second chances. Not because they deserve them, but because you don't want to become hard like the world. But if someone takes advantage of that, you have my permission to draw your lines in stone. You've done enough. You've given enough. When the time comes to protect yourself, do it boldly and without guilt. I love you, Mark. I read it twice. Then I folded it back and held it against my chest like a shield. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was just finished letting people treat me like a doormat, even if they were family. Later that week, Judith came by to finalize the update to my estate plan. I added 2 new documents. The first was a letter of wishes to be opened by Bella when she turns 18. In it I explained the legacy I wanted to leave her. Not just assets or property, but values, boundaries, a full story she could carry into adulthood. The second was a sealed amendment to the trust. It stated clearly that any inheritance would only go to Bella, not Lisa. And only if Bella chose to have a relationship with me free of coercion or pressure. Judith raised an eyebrow when she read that clause. Won't that cause more drama? Probably, I said. But you're sure? I nodded. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just making sure my love can't be intercepted. The next Sunday, Lisa came with Bella. I hadn't expected her. She looked tired, paler than usual. Her hair was pulled into a bun that looked more like a knot of stress than a style. She didn't get out of the car at first. Bella jumped out and ran to me with her usual squeal. I wrapped her in my arms, and we started toward the door. Wait, Lisa called out finally, stepping out of the car. She walked up slowly, her hands trembling. Can I talk to you for a second? She asked. I looked at Bella. Go inside and grab the crayons, sweet pea. When the door closed behind her, I turned to my daughter. Lisa looked down. I know you don't trust me anymore. And maybe I don't deserve that trust back. She was crying now. I just wanted to say, thank you for still letting me bring Bella. You didn't have to, but you did. She wiped her face. And I know I haven't made it easy. I let things get so tangled between us, and I've been selfish and hurtful And I lied. But I miss you. I miss my mother. And I want to try, if you'll let me. I let her words sit in the air. Trying, I said, isn't saying the right things, it's doing them. I know. Trust isn't a switch, Lisa. It's a ladder. And I'm tired of carrying it by myself. She nodded slowly. Then I'll help, she whispered. We stood there a moment longer, and though I didn't forgive her fully that day, I saw the first brick laid back into the road between us. It would take time, but time I had. Later that night, Bella handed me a drawing. It was us on the porch, in rocking chairs, the sunset behind us, and her bear in her lap. I smiled. What's this one called? I asked. She beamed. Home, she said, and something in me broke open. Not in a painful way, but like the sound of ice cracking when spring comes. I keep the note on the fridge now, the one I left the day I walked out of Lisa's house, the one that started it all. Not because I'm proud of the pain, but because I'm proud of the line where I stopped letting love excuse mistreatment, where I stopped being inconvenient in my own life, where I chose peace over proximity and myself over their comfort. And now, even if I never get everything back the way it was, I've finally made a home inside myself, and that no one can take away.